Hello, hello, everyone. I'm just popping on to revamp some learning objectives that for a curriculum that I designed. Um, and if you're new here, my name is Jennifer Mitchell Early. Thanks for joining. I thought I'd pop on a live. I haven't done that one in a while. To be honest with you, lives make me just a little bit crazy because I'm a little bit of a control freak. So with taping, you can always go back and edit and all of that jazz. And with live, you just like flying by the seat of your pants. So I just thought I would go with it to talk about revamping learning objectives. Sometimes you will create a course or curriculum, and as a part of the feedback process, you may get feedback on the direction that the curriculum or the program is taking, and there may be a question about a learning objective, and you may need to go back and retweak it. So this is a curriculum that I worked on that was based on a tool that my mother had as a ELA, English Language Arts teacher, some time ago. She had the tool, and I decided to build curriculum around it. I'm not sure if you are aware, I have a lot of educators, former educators, transitioning educators that follow me on this channel. For those of you who are new, my mother was a 36-year veteran educator. She was actually my teacher at one point, and my sixth grade teacher, in fact. And I tell a couple of stories about that. It was very strange to have your teacher as your mother. Rest assured, that was not an ideal situation, but one that we made work. But my mother was an ELA teacher, and so she had this tool that she created to help her students to better reading, comprehension, and also writing essay questions, responses on the state standardized tests. So she gave me the tool, and I just happened to be doing some research. I love education, whether it be training and development. Interesting tidbit is that when I went to college to become a teacher, a K through 12 teacher, teaching uh, communication. And I transferred schools. I went from one college to the other after 2 years. And when I went to the new college, I didn't really like their college of education. So I ended up transferring. So instead of doing education and teaching it, I think it would have been K through 8, maybe. I can't remember what the certification was because even back then it was certification and not licensure like it is now. But I just went straight communication and then did training and development, decided to teach adults as opposed to kids. But as I was doing some reading and some research, I'm finding that literacy is an issue in the United States. In particular, our children have been struggling in reading and math for some time. I know that the news focused on it. There was more talked about it during and after the pandemic. But the fact of the matter is, our kids have been struggling for decades. And so I'll do a video about that. But dating back to like George Bush and No Child Left Behind, our kids have been left behind for a little while now, despite the efforts to hold teachers and schools and administrations and districts to task and hold them accountable. Um, no matter how much money was thrown at these endeavors, our kids were still struggling. And that was exacerbated, in fact, by the pandemic. And they're still behind. And now they have the science of reading program. So every, I would say, decade or so, the federal government reinvents a program to through the Department of Education to try to mitigate these issues and these challenges. So I wrote this program, and uh, created the objectives by looking at state standards and looking at what the issues are and understanding a little bit about how children read and comprehension and the relationship between reading and writing. and develop the objectives from there. So now, with the likely changes to the Department of Education based off of our recent election, I'm thinking about retooling this curriculum. This curriculum was the intended audience was for teachers either new to the field or even those that have been in the field for a while. Because what happens is, and this is in every industry, and I talk about this in particular as it relates to training and development, is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Don't hop on every new trend and think that's the end all be all because it's not. It's a trend, it's a new tool, a new way to do things, but it doesn't mean that it's trusted, tried, or true, number one, or that it is going to replace those foundational things that we do. So I'll just use training and development for example. There's a lot of new ways to present training, right? When I came up in training, I'm going to date myself. I've been doing this for some time, as those of you who follow me know. When I first interviewed for a job in training and development, I literally used transparencies, like transparencies, the light focus at the, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a brain fart here, but you know what I'm talking about. When you had a projector that project up on the screen and pulled it down, and so the transparency machine would reflect off of the little sheets that you would put on the top of it, and you would write on it, and then you would, you know, use a water and a napkin and wipe it off and write back on it again. When we were in school, or when at least when I was in school, teachers used transparency. So when I first started training, I interviewed with transparencies. And so things have gone from transparencies to the invention of smart boards or whiteboards. We went from flip chart paper to whiteboards and smart boards, and now, um, to first it was distance, training. Then it was blended training. Then now you have things like articulate and captivate and all those things, gamification, all those things to make training exciting. But if we get away from the foundational, the basic tenets of adult learning principles, and then for this program, from the pedagogy and the the methodologies that teachers use to teach reading and comprehension, which builds on a student's ability to be able to write in order to take their thoughts and cohesively respond in writing. When you get away from the foundation, from the very basic tenets of things, then and you get caught up in the hype, then we lose. Sometimes we lose purpose. So I always say, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Refresh the bathwater by all means. If it's lukewarm, heat it up. But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Some things are foundational and they're great. They're solid foundations on which to build. And you can take those new things and new trends and the new ways of going about things or new methodology, and you can, use it as a stepping stone from that point. So, in any case, this program that I wrote was geared towards teachers, and it got back to foundational principles. It talked about reading comprehension and the relationship between reading and writing, and how students respond to essay questions and the use of formula writing, along with this tool that my mother created in her classroom. And there are, well, I'm looking at it now, so one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11. There are about 11 learning objectives, with the overall performance objective is that participants will be able to write critical, comprehensive responses to short answers and essay questions. I think this is foundational for students because throughout your academic career, your post secondary, I would say, time, students are building on this and they're always using this when you go to college and you're writing when you're applying and you have your entrance essays. This will be paramount for that too. When you're writing papers, when you graduate from high school and go on, if you go on to college, graduate from college, or you just go to work. When you do reports, you'll have to be able to understand how to support, have a thesis, your argument, your stance, whatever that may be, and be able to support it and document it and reference it with academic resources, not just with opinion. And sometimes in this day and age, we got a lot of opinion floating around and not a whole lot of fact or research or evidence behind what's being said or stated or declared or what have you, whatever term you want to throw in there. So as I look at this, and as we talk about retooling our course objectives, your objectives, and if you don't know the difference between a performance objective or learning objective, I have those videos here on the channel. You can go back and I'll uh, link them at the bottom as well. But when you're talking about your course objectives are like the framework for your program to me. That's the frame. It's like a frame for a house. Like, you have the frame and then you build it out from there. You have your frame for your coursework, are your objectives, and your objectives can come from a number of places. Your objectives can come from your client. Your client may say, hey, I want my team to uh, be more cohesive. That's at the end of the day, I want them to be able to work together and all that. And you take the idea, the concept of being cohesive, of being a team, and you break those down into objectives, what it takes to be a team, being able to communicate, being able to work with a diverse group of individuals, diverse not just in looks and culture and background, but diversity of thought as well. What it means to meet deadlines, um, what it means to, win together or build something together and not work in silos. Those are some of those things, those ideas that go into, I want them to be able to work together as a team. And you take those concepts and then you can break those down into objectives, knowing that if they meet those individual objectives, then the performance objective of being able to work cohesively together as a team, that performance objective will be met once they met the other, after having met the other learning objectives. So I'm looking back at this program, and first of all, the audience has changed. So with the change of audience, obviously, that's going to dictate a change in my objectives, because what the end result is, the performance goal is for one audience is going to change for another. I'm really seriously considering taking this apart. This is probably a 6 to 8 hour professional development
I'm not sure I
course,
understand.
as structured. Sorry, Siri is always listening. This is probably like a 6 to 8 hour course as developed, and I really want to think turn this either into an ebook. I'm playing with this, an ebook, or um, an online course. Uh, and I haven't really decided which way I want to go, and um, that will only impact how it's packaged, really, not necessarily how I develop the course objectives. But some of these course objectives, because of the audience was teachers, I could assume some level of education. I could assume some basis for which to begin this conversation about reading comprehension and all that. If my audience changes to, let's say, parents, then I would have to start to define things, um, like define reading comprehension, and talk about the importance of reading and the benchmarks perhaps of reading in a child's life. And I would have to, this program is really for sixth to eighth grade, and to bring this down even further, like if I wanted to market this to someone who's homeschooling their child, like to have it broken out in levels. So that's going to change some of the objectives too, because then I have to figure out what objective works for what grade level. And when I first developed this program, actually went on my state Department of Education's website to look at the state standards to see, what grade level, if I'm looking at sixth to eighth grade, what in their ELA, English language art and arts. And just so you know, reading stops at a certain grade level, and then English comes in at the following grade level, and it proceeds from there. So when you're looking at your objectives, you also have to know where you're looking for them. You just can't pull them out of the sky because it sounds good to you. It has to make sense. And it has to make sense, most importantly, to the learner, to the end user. So they'll understand the information that's being given to them in a comprehensive and cohesive way, and that it will fit together. Right. So as I look at these, I'm really playing with now where I'm going to break this out. I already know I'm changing the audience. And I know that I'm going to have to flush these objectives that I have out even further, right? Because I have to kind of build the basis that I want a learner to start on, whether rather than to assume one. So I am going to look at these and break these down. So if you were working on a program where you had, let's say, feedback came, they're like, oh, you know what? I've had this happen a gazillion times. They really don't need to know X, Y, and Z. They kind of know that. I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, I built a rigging program. Basically, I won't say from scratch. Did give me like a 20-page pamphlet on which to review. I didn't know anything about rigging. Rigging is lifting heavy materials or using heavy materials to lift things, like if you see cargo that's being lifted on a ship, being placed back and forth, that's rigging. If you see the electric company putting up telephone poles, that's rigging. If you see lights on a concert stage, where when you see all their backdrop in their stage and all the theatrics, that has been rigged, that has been set in place. I didn't know anything about that. So the 20-page paper, while gave me a starting point, it wasn't really helpful. I had to go do my own research. And as an instructional designer, especially if you're working in industries that you have not been introduced to or haven't worked in before, this is probably par for the course. You don't know it, so you have to get to know it. So you have to do some extra work to do that. But let's just say when I worked on that program, I took 20 pages and made it an 8-chapter, multiple day, multiple week curriculum that talked about OSHA standards and safety standards. Rigging is life and death. People can die if something isn't rigged correctly, if the weight, the calculations are not, if it's not, if the proper tools and materials are not used. There's a difference between a metal sling and a rope sling and all of those things. But some for people who have been doing things a long time, oftentimes they will say, oh, we don't need to get into that. They know that. And there's an assumption that's made that the end user knows it. But what happens for the person who's come to this point in their career and they've never done it before? Or they think that what they've done before in the past is it, and only to find out that that's not it. The assumption can have very tragic results. My job is not to make assumptions. My job is to make sure that all the information is there. And if someone who is facilitating it finds that, oh, after they've polled the class or they've done some entry level assessment as they enter into like a new hire training class or new to rigging training class, that they don't need this information, that they can kind of gloss over it, go over it, keep it in the participants guide, give them the hands out, let them hands, yeah, the handout, let them read it at their leisure. And then, maybe do a pre-assessment, test them on their way into the class or test them after that introduction to make sure everybody is where you think they should be before you move forward. So your objectives is always better in my estimation, and I could be wrong, and I people who think differently can for sure go ahead and make comments and give us your thoughts on it, because I value different perspectives. I think more is more. I don't think less is more. I think having more clearly defined objectives is better. Now, aesthetically, it's probably more aesthetically pleasing to have, a handful of objectives. You can see from here, I got a whole list, right? And I've got some markings here too of ones that I wanted to expand out. So sometimes people will lump things together because we use assumptions as an instructional designer. And a lot of times managers or leaders will use assumptions because it's all lumped together for them. But for someone coming into it, they need every step. And that used to be called back in the day, again, I'm going to date myself, a task listing. So if I was doing training, when I started training, I was training at a bank. If I was doing training and I needed to know, I was training tellers, I needed to know what they do, and I was not familiar with what a bank teller, now customer service rep, does. I would sit there, I would watch them, and I would list out every task that they did, from greeting the customer to, asking how they could help them that day, if it was what type of transaction it was, noting the steps to that transaction, everything down to the close of the day, to counting out their drawer, balancing it, and being done for the evening. That was a task listing for that role. And so I find that though haven't done a formal task listing in years, I do some type of task listing. It's just ingrained in me now to do. Excuse me. So I'll do like oftentimes I'll sit with someone if I don't know their job or their role and I have to speak to it in training. I'll sit with them, I'll ask them questions. I go through what they're doing. That's It's almost like a hybrid needs analysis and task listing because I'm watching what they do. I know what the function of their job is, which entails a task listing. And then I'm also questioning them about, what gaps, what shortcuts they use, why they use those, how they got to that shortcut, because employers, or excuse me, employees will share shortcuts with one another. But when you're new, a shortcut sounds good and it looks good, but it doesn't do you any good when you have to know exactly what you're doing and why. You know it's a shortcut, but you don't know what it's shortcutting, and you don't know the consequence of using that shortcut, and what the long way or the proper way is to do it. So that's why, back to circling back to objectives, that's why for me, more is more. The more that I can outline in the objectives, I think the more sturdy the house that I'm building is. So when I go through it at the end of the day, and I often have, like when I'm developing something new, before I send my rough copy to my client, I often have like my mom sit through as a participant. Back in the day, they used to do pilot programs. I haven't done a pilot program since the 90s. Okay, where you would actually well, no, that's not true. That's not true. I did work as an FT, as a full-time employee in retail training, and we did a managers meeting every year. And so when we developed our training, I I mean, it's not technically a pilot. We would run it with our cohorts in in retail, who we would have to present on stage with. So I don't know that that is pilot. To me, piloting a program is actually running it, seeing with participants live, like seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work, and then making the adjustments, in the program after the fact, like making notes as you go along, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. That really was great for like time, because I have been in departments where I'm pretty good at estimating my time because I've been doing this a while. But I've also been in departments where literally they had stopwatches for, like, when we read the script, and click off the stopwatches, click on the stopwatches for, an activity, and then click them off. But it didn't leave room for those things that you can't account for, like the extra questions or aha moments or examples, or having expound on a topic when you think it's probably going to be clear cut and you realize, oh no, it's not. I need to do a little bit more to drive this point home to check off that objective. So I kind of pilot the programs that I write with my mother. So if I'm doing something and I have to do it, on Zoom, then I will set up a Zoom meeting or whatever with her. If something in person, then she'll come over. And my whole thing is, at the end of the day, and I do this after every time, anytime I train, and I build this into my programs as well, I always ask, have we met the objectives? I start with the objectives and expectations, which I've talked about, and I end with the expectations and the objectives again, to make sure that we've been on the same page the entire time, This is what we said we would talk about. Did we talk about it? And I go through each and every objective to make sure, because it's all well and good to make things creative and exciting and fun. I'm all for that. I believe in creating a safe space for my participants to share things with me that pertain to how they're taking in the training, what challenges they have on the job, applying applying the training or doing their job currently. It's a safe space. Whatever happens in my classroom stays in my classroom or in the event space or whatever, wherever I'm at. It's like Vegas. And that's how I basically start. What happens here stays here. So I want this to be a safe place for you to share so that at the end of the day, you get what you need when you walk out the door to do what you need to do and do it successfully. That's the goal. That's a common goal that we share. So the objective, starting with that and ending with that, so we can go through it and make sure that everything has been met, means that you got it. You understand what we talked about and you can apply it. Because that's the whole difference between performance objectives and learning objectives. Performance is what you can do when it's all said and done. Learning objectives are what we're going to go over here to make sure that you can do it. Right. And so that's why I pilot the program with my mother so that I can see, hey, did I assume something in this? Did I assume that you would know what this means? Even with this program that I wrote based on her tool, to those for educators, I had her look at it from the standpoint of a teacher. Did I make too many assumptions? Did I make assumptions at all? Does this make sense? Does this follow? Does this flow? Is this realistic? Because sometimes we also get requests for training and exercises and objectives that aren't, they're not realistic. They're not even, sometimes they're not even tied to what the person does. I have also been in situations where I've talked to an end user and they told me that their job was MNOP and the middle manager told me it was ABC. So there's a disconnect even in what a manager or middle manager or leader, whatever you want to call them, stakeholder, believes that the person who's actually implementing, who's actually doing the job is doing. They don't even know. They know in concepts, they know in figuratively speaking, but the practical day to day, how somebody does their job, they have no clue. And I'm sure that there are some of you who are watchers who know, like, your manager has no idea. So when you're out for the day or something needs to be done and you can't do it, it's at a loss. It sits there until you get back. Right. So much for the whole cross training. Remember that trend where everybody was going to cross train so they could, that was a part of the succession management where people would be able to move up the ladder. And when you wouldn't be up, it wouldn't be a problem to promote Susie because Denise knew exactly what Susie was doing. That's what I mean. Trends. Everything sounds good. Theoretically, everything sounds good. And I'm not saying that things are not well intentioned. What I'm saying is the reality is, and when the rubber meets the road, those intentions don't always bear out. I've worked long enough to know that it sounds good and people mean well and all that. And at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is some people just want to tick it off for their performance appraisal. It don't really have anything to do with yours, other than the fact that their performance appraisal is predicated on them having you do something, right? It's predicated on you being successful in their eyes so that their manager can find that they're successful in their eyes. So, yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about. I jumped on here to see if I could, there are any questions or, that I could answer for people while I'm popping on. I know I get a lot of emails and thank you for the comments for those who watch who find the content valuable. I'm just speaking from my 25 plus years of experience. Everybody's experience is going to be different. I'm just sharing mine, and I would love for you to share yours. But if there's any other questions I can answer for you, I know I was supposed to come on here and really develop this course with you, but things don't go as seamlessly offline as we would like for them to appear online. And sorry, it really took me several months to really get this in the position that I wanted it to be in, that I thought would be useful. And no shade to the teachers and the districts out here, but teachers are thrown, they have a lot of things they have to be responsible for these days. They got to be responsible for their classroom management, behavior. They're social workers to a large degree. And it's hard to manage an environment with all these competing priorities and factors and still ensure that the learning happens. So for the teachers that are still in there fighting the good fight, I say thank you. I mean, my daughter has grown and doing very well and getting ready to graduate from college. And I know that's because of the teachers that she had and the district that she was in. Fortunately, her district is one of the top 10 in our state. The affluence and by way of just the grades and the proficiency of the district. So we were truly blessed in that regard. But having come up in a district that just recently, I think is now at a C level, maybe, maybe a C level. They're very happy about that, which is great because they at one point were not at a C level; they were below that. Um, Education has definitely changed, and this is a discussion probably from my other channel, my Just Jennifer channel, where I just give you my thoughts beyond the training and development. But I'll say this in closing. Um, it's up to us. It's not, yes, it is, it's not solely the teachers. And we found that out during the pandemic. We found out everything that a teacher had to do when we were at home with our own kids, wanting to pull out our hair while we tried to work, teach, take care, be mom, be wife, be ourselves and do what we needed to do. Um, the structure, the support system that used to be in place that aided, that supplemented what our kids got when they were in school, that's gone. That's been eroded through just the fact that many of us are working to make ends meet to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. They don't have time to make sure that you read that book. They don't have time to take you to the library to sit so that you can read a book or do things like they used to have little programs at the library. I'm sure they still do have them. I'm just so far removed with a grown adult child now that our days in the library, but we did go. We went to the library a lot when she was coming up because she was an avid reader. So she would go get books. In fact, I still one of the bags that we use to keep all our books in is tattered and torn, but it's one of my grocery bags now. And she would go and get her books and read them, and she still does that. She buys a lot of books. So my daughter is definitely a reader, and I was as well. Probably because my mother was an ELA teacher, so it was nothing for her to say, Jennifer, go get a book and wait for me and read. And I read, and when you read, it strengthens your comprehension, it strengthens your vocabulary, it strengthens everything. And so even my friends used to say to me all the time, like, oh, they love my vocabulary. That came from, yes, my mother was educated and my mother was a teacher, but it came from reading. It came from exposure to those words and having to use context clues to know what those words meant, so that I could in turn use those words and use them in context. And then probably my weakest point is spelling. It's my weakest point because what happened? We got spell check. I can't help but think, Lord, is technology is it a bane in our sides or is it the boom that it's supposed to be? Like, is it helping us or is it hurting us? I think we should really, I mean, we should really start asking these questions. I mean, even as a training and development specialist, that's great that you can educate yourself in your own time at your leisure, that you can, that it's in portable segments where you can do it on your phone and you can have fun. But really, how much of that is really being retained? I can remember taking the same compliance training video for years on and then memorizing the answers. Not that it was sinking in, like actually, but just knowing this came here, and thinking like I just want to jump off a bridge because I have to do this again. Like waiting to the absolute last minute to do this compliance training. And I'm thinking that for trainers, the transfer of trainer is it. That's the game, right? That's the end all be all. If somebody's having a great time with you while you're teaching a course and they love you but they don't know crap when they walk out the door, you have failed. You might be personable, you might be great. You may have, if you designed it, it may be instructionally sound, it may meet all the adult learning principles, but if they don't know, if they can't do what you say they're supposed to do in that performance objective, you have failed. It's really simple. And as convenient as we want to make training, and as fun as we want to make training, and as intuitive as we want to make training, I don't know if that meets our end goal. Training and education is the information, the knowledge, and the resources, tools that we need to be successful in our endeavors in life. Everything can't be convenient. Everything isn't supposed to be fun. Some things require work. And like if we were like, hey, attorneys, y'all don't have to go to school that long. Doctors, yeah, let's just, we'll get the game of operation. We're gonna learn to see how skillful you are with your hand. If we can't, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just say it this way. And maybe this is a harsh way of saying it, but for a lack of a better way of saying it at this point, we can't continue to dumb things down or make things easy or convenient to the point that it no longer has value. And for those of you who are leaving education and want to go into training and development, you will find that some of the things that are pushing you out of your classroom will also challenge you in corporate settings. The whole thing about time and money and just giving folks what they need, not even the entire picture, but a piece of it, and you know full well that's not enough. The same things that irritate you, with the exception of behavioral issues. I mean, not to say that you can't have those in a corporate setting as well. Let me just keep it 100. Adult tantrums are just a little different, but they're tantrums nonetheless. Um, you're going to be challenged because I think ultimately the desire is to educate individuals, to help them to connect the dots. At least that was for me, to watch the light turn on, to help them make their jobs easier, not because it's easy, but because they have a better understanding of what's required of them and have all the tools that they need to do the job well. I just wonder, this is almost like we're creating things in early education and secondary education that's perpetuated in post-secondary education, that's perpetuated in our workforces. And then we wonder why we get the results that we have now. Um, yeah, so I'm going to conclude with that. And thank you for watching. If there's any questions you have, I think I'm going to do a series of lives. I feel like, I feel like I've made it over the learning curve. I don't like to, I don't like to do new things and stretch outside of my comfort zone. And I know I'm not alone. And the first couple times that I did this, I was trying to do it with additional software and all that. And then I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to come on here. Whoever comes, comes. Whatever questions you ask, I'll answer. And so somebody asked me a while back, how I got clients to listen to me basically. This person was working in training and development, and when they pushed back on their client was like, "Yeah, no, this is what we want and I don't care what you think." Basically, I'm probably adding a lot to this, y'all, but basically that was the comment. So how do you get people to um how do you get people to listen to your advice and your counsel as you are consulting them on a training program? And so the next time we meet, I talked about it. I think maybe I talked about it in one live that just it didn't work, so it got deleted. So I probably will revisit that. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. And then I'll answer that too. But I'm gonna come back on and and do these lives and talk through my thoughts about development and facilitation and leadership and things like that. And I'm definitely going to come back and talk about you know how to educate offline, like informal education. It doesn't always have to be stand up or training and development, but if you are a trainer at heart, if you are a learning professional at heart, whether you are a teacher, then that never goes away. You never stop teaching. You always um, capitalize, or at least I hope that you would try to capitalize on teachable moments. And we have several teachable moments on the horizon, everybody. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.